Hey everyone! So I made a YouTube short a while back about reflected light on skin colors. I got a bunch of questions about it and I feel like I need to explain it. First, let's watch the short. Hey everyone, so check this out. I'm in my house. Now, my walls are painted white. So why the heck is this wall pink? Well, that color is from the sunlight reflecting off of my daughter's pink jacket. The local base color of my wall starts about here. But look how far away from that this color is. That's the influence reflected light can have on color. So I did this fan art from Squid Game. I was able to push the skin colors because of reflected light. I was thinking about two overall sources of it: the warm color of the environment and the blue color of the sky. Start with what you think is the base color of the skin. In real life, we don't actually see base color, so just take a guess. Fill in that transition, and voila, there's your palette of skin colors. Now, what you want to do is make sure you keep them separate. Where the sunlight bounces up from the ground, use the warms. Where the skylight shines down from above, use the cools. This will not only make your paintings colorful, but it tells the viewer where the light is coming from. Reflected light is powerful stuff. Alright, so people liked that short, but one of the main questions people had after it was, how did you know how to fill in those charts? And of course, that's where shorts fall short. But through the power of a regular length YouTube video, I'll explain it. So you need two colors, of course. A starting color and where you're headed with it, and there are a few different scenarios. Let's begin with a desaturated color going to a saturated color, just like my white walls. It's very important to first visualize where these colors live on the color wheel. In this case, the two colors are about here. Alright, this is probably the easiest path. It's simply a straight line from perfectly desaturated to the saturated color. Watch as that gray swatch performs this movement. It's a linear path. It does not veer off that violet hue. It simply gains saturation. And that is the color chart I showed here in my short. Okay, so how about two more colors? This time, two different hues that are neighbors on the color wheel, with just one hue separating them. Orange in this case. When two colors are on the same side of the color wheel, near neighbors like this, when one color moves to the other, they can retain their saturation. Watch as the yellow color travels to the red. It goes like this. Now, if I painted that as a color chart, which is always a good exercise to do, by the way, it looks like this. Simple enough, right? As a variation here, let's say we started at a less saturated yellow, moving to that same red. This chart is basically a combination of the first two charts. The base color steadily gains saturation, but as it does, it also introduces the hue movement. Still very simple here, I think. But it's only able to be this simple when the colors are neighbors. So what if we had these two colors? These colors are not neighbors. In fact, they live on opposite sides of the color wheel. Now, this path won't work. Well, hang on, it's art, you can do whatever you want. But that's not what nature does. Let's bring in a vacuum cleaner at gray. When you cross gray, the vacuum cleaner sucks the saturation out of the color. It doesn't completely suck it away, but it takes out more than a little bit. I mean, just look at how much distance you have from gray at these areas versus this area. Then, when you're free of that gray, like in this area here, the vacuum cleaner is out of the picture, and you're free now to gain back that saturation. So, as this yellow makes its way to that blue, you have to be cognizant of that suction area in the gray region. And it's only at this point that I can gain back that saturation. Okay, theory is all well and good. We gotta put it to practice. And I highly recommend doing this with spheres or something very simple. Here's a base color. I'm choosing a ballparked flesh tone here. Now, when I lay in these shadows, I am not changing the color at all. I'm simply darkening the base color. And now, in the light side here, is where I begin my first color chart. What are my two colors? Well, I started with the base color that you just saw, and I am mixing toward a more yellowish version of that. And look at the color wheel to see the general path I'm taking. Exactly the same thing we saw in our theory section earlier. Now, I chose that second color due to the light source. I wanted it to be like a golden sun or something like that. Now let's do a different color mix in the shadows. Again, I'm motivated by the light. In this case, reflected light coming from a blue environment. So, as I start to cool down that base color, I am moving it toward blue on a path. I'm not just jumping to blue. The path I'm taking is pretty much the exact same path I showed on the color wheel here. Again, this is the path I'm taking in the shadow colors, because the shadow colors are affected by the environment colors. Can you see how those color mixes are really quite agreeable? It's because it's from nature. Even a non-artist will recognize that path instinctively, because we see it all the time. And what still amazes me about color is that that ball still reads like a flesh-colored ball, despite the fact that I've gone completely away from that, especially in the shadows. All right, let's do another one here. This time I'll light the ball predominantly in shadow, because that is where colors get interesting. Shadow colors are affected by ambient light, reflected light. I have more videos on those things, links on the screen right now. But anyway, here's my setup. I've so far kept the shadow colors deliberately flat so that I can now start adding those color blends. Starting with the bottom part of the ball, which I'm adding a warm reflected light to. This is the exact same color move that I did in the light side of the previous ball. I'm just keeping the values in shadow this time, that's all. Light is light. And remember that there very much is light in shadow. A lot of it, actually. Another link on the screen here to a larger lecture about shadow colors specifically. All right, let's start working on the upper part of this ball, still in shadow, but getting a whole different light. This is identical to our previous ball in shadow. Remember that blue ambient light we added there? It's the exact same color shift, same color chart. Once again, it looks like this. Remember that vacuum cleaner sucking the saturation out as it moves through the gray there? That's how I set up this opposing color movement and start charting those colors along that path before ultimately getting to my blues. And another thing about that, how far you get along the path is really up to you. I'm pushing for color here for demonstration purposes, but if you want a more subtle look, you can stop halfway through the path. Say like right there on the color wheel. Nature does that all the time. That depends on a few factors, but chief among them is how strong the light source is. For example, sunlight is going to have more power to push a color through the path than reflected light will. And there's our two spheres. Very different lighting conditions, but the same color theory. If you're like me and have an endless appetite for high-quality color instruction, I've been checking out master demos lately. These are supremely well-produced videos of artists working on and teaching their craft in real life. I've been really enjoying the Mike Hernandez installment lately. Mike Hernandez is mostly known for being a VizDev artist at DreamWorks, and in the master demos videos, you get to see him plein air painting and mixing color, and talking about color temperature and specific mixtures and the materials he likes. They did a really good job in making it feel like you're truly standing right there with him. Use the link on screen and in the description, and use code MARCO at checkout for 5% off. All right, back to the lesson. All right, let's circle back now to the character painting you saw in the beginning of this video. Although not quite, just a step shy of that. This is going to be a full color study, but not a full drawing study. This is kind of a shorthand I learned doing concept art and color keys, actually, where you need to be very specific with your color, but not so specific with drawing or design. I remember being inspired by this color key painting by Dice Susumi for Toy Story 3. See how the characters don't even have faces, yet the lighting reads perfectly. That's what we're doing here. Just like the spheres, I'm not changing colors initially. The shadow color for now is the same as the base color, just darker. All right, starting with the light side. This is sunlight, just like our first ball. And sunlight is pretty easy. You kind of choose the color of the sun, which depends on the time of day, and your own aesthetics, I guess. And sunlight is going to be so strong that it basically bullies the colors to be like it. There's not a whole lot of room for subtlety with sunlight colors. So when considering the path we're taking, we are really going to be favoring the end portions of the path, because sunlight will really push it there. Okay, now I'm tackling the warm reflected light bouncing up, hitting the down-facing planes of the head. This is exactly what we did in the second sphere. I'm pushing the base color, in this case, toward a pretty golden yellow to harmonize with the environment. And of course, this is where your knowledge of the planes of the head comes in, so you know which planes receive this light, in this case, the planes that face down. And right now I've switched to the planes that face up. They are going to get light coming down from the sky, so they get bluer. But you should know by now, we're not just going to jump to blue. We have to make our way there, using the path we've seen several times now. If I'm starting from this kind of flesh color, usually my first move is to use like an orange or red, but gray it off. Starting the movement toward gray will already make the color look cooler, getting that vacuum cleaner saturation suction going. Then I move into gray violets, progress through slightly more saturated violets, and then into the blues, getting more saturated as I get there. And again, so many different colors here, yet it just looks like a flesh tone. A flesh tone affected by light. And that's really what you're going for as a painter. In this style of art, anyway. One aesthetic tip here. If you are straddling very different colors like this from different light sources, choose one that gets to travel to the most saturation in the end. In this case, it's the warm bounce light coming up, hitting the down-facing planes. I allowed that color to be more saturated than the blue. That's not a rule. It just tends to look a little nicer when multiple light sources aren't competing for saturation. All right, if you like this lesson and want more, check out marcobucciartstore.com. I have hours of material there. Classes suitable for beginners, intermediate, and advanced artists. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.